Welcome to what is now known as Black Wrestling News. Yes, I decided to revamp the channel once and for all. I tried several names, but many of them did not work. But this one right here, I'm not changing it. Let me tell you the reason why I call it Black Wrestling News. I'm a student of the history of professional wrestling. I've studied it for a long, long time, and I have analyzed it. And one thing that I've noted, and that is this: with all of the reporting, all of the websites and the different wrestling programs on YouTube, and I like a lot of them. I really check them out for myself. And you know what? But they don't really focus on the historical pioneering perspective that many African American or black wrestlers have contributed to the world of professional wrestling known as sports entertainment. So, this channel is primarily going to focus on and highlight those, in my opinion, who have been left out, been neglected, and even downright forgotten. So, tonight I'm starting with the one and only Mr. USA, Tony Atlas. And in another video, I will talk about the bodybuilding aspect of Tony Atlas. But for this particular video, I'm going to talk about Tony Atlas, the man, the person, the image, the beginning, and how he rose to national prominence within the wrestling world. So let's get down to it. Here we go. Anthony White, born April 23rd, 1954, better known by his ring name Tony Atlas, is an American bodybuilder, powerlifter, and professional wrestler who has held multiple titles and championships in each sport. He is also known by his bodybuilding title, Mr. USA, a distinction he earned 3 times. The nom de jurors, the Black Superman, as well as an alter ego named Saba Simba. We'll talk about that later. He returned as an on-screen manager for WWE, appearing on its now defunct ECW brand. He re-signed with WWE in a Legends deal in mid-2012. So how did it all start for Anthony White, aka Mr. USA, Tony Atlas? I'm going to talk about his early professional wrestling career from 1974 to 1984. Atlas started wrestling in 1974 for the National Wrestling Alliance. World Mid-Atlanta area, his debut on July 10 was a tag team match with Bob Bruggers against Art Nielsen and the Blue Scorpion. The match finished with Atlas winning the fall for his team with a sleeper hold on the Blue Scorpion. Throughout his career, he worked for World Championship Wrestling, WCW, the NWA's Jim Crockett Promotions, the World Wrestling Council, WWC, World Class Championship Wrestling, WCCW, the American Wrestling Association, the AWA, and the World Wrestling Federation, WWF. Among his regular partners were Tommy Rich as TNT, Dick Murdoch, and Rocky Johnson. That's the father of The Rock. He was also the very first man to press slam and pin Hulk Hogan, though Hogan's foot was on the rope and the referee did not see it. During his time with the NWA, Atlas captured the NWA Georgia Tag Team title with Tommy Rich. He later teamed with Mr. Wrestling number 2, Thunderbolt Patterson, Kevin Sullivan, and Rocky Johnson. In 1982, he wrestled for New Japan Pro Wrestling. From 1982 to 1983, he wrestled for Bill Watts' Universal Wrestling Federation. Then from 1983 to 1984, he returned to Georgia and wrestled in St. Louis. Atlas debuted in the, I want to talk about his debut in the World Wrestling Federation from 1979 the 1984, as it was known back then. Atlas debuted in the World Wrestling Federation on October 23, 1979, defeating Johnny Raj at a championship wrestling taping. One of his first feuds was with Jesse the Body Ventura, over who had the better physique. In 1983, he teamed with Rocky Johnson as the Soul Patrol to defeat the Wild Samoans for the WWF World Tag Team Championship, becoming the company's first black champions. After losing the title to Adrian Adonis and Dick Murdoch, and missing shows due to drug addiction, Atlas's final match was on May 16, 1984, in Lacey Township, New Jersey. So where did he go from there? He went to the American Wrestling Association in 1984. 2 months after departing the World Wrestling Federation, Atlas resurfaced in Vern Gagne's AWA. He made his debut on July 13 at a house show in Denver, Colorado, and defeated Chris Markoff. At the time, the AWA was being rated for talent by the WWF. This represented a swing in the opposite direction, and Atlas received a push upon joining the promotion. He was undefeated against Mr. Electricity, Steve Regal, Larry Sabisco, and Jack Milliman in July, before finally being defeated by King Kong Bundy on April 11th in Indianapolis, Indiana. This and a disqualification loss to Nick Bockwinkel were Atlas's only 2 defeats in singles competition. On October 10, 1984, he teamed with The Crusher and faced AWA Tag Team Champions, the Road Warriors, for a shot at the titles, and won by disqualification. 10 days later, he teamed with Jim Brunzell for another shot at the Road Warriors, but this time was defeated. His final match with the promotion was a victory against Tom Scott on October 28th, after which he returned to the World Wrestling Federation. So after leaving the AWA, Atlas returned to the World Wrestling Federation from 1984 to 1986, and then he came back in 1987. So, one day after departing the AWA, Atlas returned to the WWF, at a TV taping for All Star Wrestling in Hamilton, Ontario, and pinned Rene Goulet in a match that aired on November 17. Upon his return, Atlas was shunted to the mid-card in the WWF and was undefeated against competition that included Mr. Fuji, the Spoiler, the Iron Sheik, rest in peace, Iron Sheik, and Moondog Rex. He scored a win against Bob Orton and an untitled victory over WWF Intercontinental Champion Greg Valentine at the Steel Cage Turmoil Round Robin Tournament in Hartford, Connecticut on November 23, 1984, a predecessor to the King of the Ring tournaments that were held later in the decade as an annual house show event, but suffered his first defeat on his comeback when he lost to David Schultz. This would be his only loss for several months, as he would not be pinned again until losing to Paul Orndorff on Primetime Wrestling on March 19, 1985. At this point, Atlas began to transition to a mid-card performer and would lose several matches, including bouts with Bret Hart, Greg Valentine, Don Morocco, and Roddy Piper. The company also programmed him into several short-lived tag teams with Ivan Putski, Lanny Poffo, and George Wells. Atlas made his pay-per-view debut, or the PPV, in 1986 when he appeared in the Battle Royal at WrestleMania 2, being eliminated by William Perry. He was also used as a jobber to the stars, putting over newly arriving talent like King Kong Bundy and Harley Race. Harley Race wasn't hardly any new talent. He was a well-seasoned professional age wrestler by that point, as well as a series of matches with other muscle-bound strongmen such as Hercules and the world's strongest man, Ted Arcidi, the latter of which in an infamous match at Boston Garden, where both men were booed by the crowd and mocked by commentators Gorilla Monsoon and Lord Alfred Hayes. I thought Lord Alfred Hayes was a great commentator during his time in the World Wrestling Federation. So he was mocked by Gorilla Monsoon, who went on to become the president, I think, of the World Wrestling Federation. Or was that someone else? Could have been someone else. So Atlas began to be shunted further down the card, losing to Big John Studd, Iron Sheik, Dory Funk Jr., and Harley Race. His final match was a loss to Adrian Adonis in a bout that took place in Madison Square Garden, which aired on September 8, 1986 on Prime Time Wrestling. Tony made a non-match return on August 28, 1987 when he teamed with the Junkyard Dog to defeat Kamala and Sika at the WWF Paul Bosch retirement show. So after Atlas left there, he went to World Class Championship Wrestling from 1986 until 1988. 2 months later, Atlas joined the Texas-based World Class Championship Wrestling, where he adopted the moniker of the Black Superman. He made his initial appearance on November 11, 1986, and defeated Tim Brooks in Fort Worth, Texas. On December 1, Atlas defeated Crusher Yurkov to win the World Class World Television Championship. In January 1987, Atlas competed in a tournament to crown the Texas Heavyweight Champion, beating Tim Brooks in the opening round, but falling to Matt Bourne in the quarterfinals. In the summer of 1987, he had almost instant success when he teamed with Skip Young to win the World Class Texas Tag Team title. Following a match that went to a time limit draw against Al Perez, Atlas left the company in 1988. So what did Atlas do from 1988 until 1990? So we got to fill in the gap here. On July 16, 1988, Atlas was appearing at a WWC event in Bayaman, a city near San Juan, Puerto Rico, where he was one of the 12 witnesses, the other being Dutch Mantel, to the fatal assault on wrestler Bruno Brozzi. Jose Hurtez Gonzalez, aka the Invader, a fellow wrestler and booker, asked Brody to go into the shower to discuss business. So all this is alleged. So I'm saying allegedly. Brody entered the shower. He entered the shower stall, and a few seconds later, a scuffle ensued, followed by 2 groans, loud enough for the entire locker room to hear. Atlas ran to the shower and saw Brody bent over and holding his stomach. Mantel came after him. Atlas and Mantel allegedly then looked up at Gonzalez and saw him holding the knife. When the paramedics arrived, Atlas carried Brody downstairs to the waiting ambulance, as due to Brody's enormous stature, paramedics were unable to lift him. Gonzalez, who always maintained his innocence, was initially charged with first-degree murder, but was later reduced and tried for involuntary homicide. Both Atlas and Mantel appeared in 2019's Dark Side of the Ring episode on Bruiser Brody and explained what actually happened. Atlas said that he was asked to be in the trial, but never got a call back because the case was already finalized. Atlas then moved on to the Southern Ontario area in late 1988. He joined International Championship Wrestling, owned and operated by Mario Savaldi, where he turned heel and under the management of the Duke, not Pete Doherty, and won the ICW heavyweight title from Joe Savaldi. Atlas lost the belt to Vic Steamboat in Middletown, New York, but after a few months, he regained the belt from Steamboat. That match became infamous because of the number of times it was shown on the IWCCW syndicated show. Afterwards, he was inactive from wrestling due to being homeless for a year and a half. In part 2 of the Tony Atlas saga, I'll talk about Atlas's return to the World Wrestling Federation from 1990 to 1991. For Black Wrestling News, I'm Todd Tanner.